Now, can I ask a quick question now? Woman to woman, how safe do you feel going out on your own after dark? The new Cleveland Police and Crime Commissioner, Steve Turner, has launched a consultation on this and the results are in. Now, more than 81% of women said they felt unsafe in town centres across Teesside after dark. Other areas of concern include parks, shops where large groups gather, and even exercising alone outside. Well, joining us now is Mr. Turner with a little bit more on this. Very good morning to you, Steve. Thanks for coming on the show this morning.
Good morning, Amy. Thanks for having me.
Now, how do you feel about the results of this survey? I mean, are you surprised by any of it?
Yes, I am actually. I suppose, like 50% of the population, I come at it from a different perspective and things I take for granted. This survey puts stark contrast onto that, and when you listen to the respondents of this survey and you read some of the comments that have come through with it, it's quite frightening that people are walking around in our towns and villages and feeling like this.
Are you surprised that town centres seem to be the most feared areas? I mean, what is it about our town centres?
I think the difficulty with a lot of our town centres at the minute is there is a large portion of people who are using drugs. I think Stockton Town Centre is horrendous for that, and I talked to one of your colleagues yesterday about just that issue. And when you see that, when you see groups of people who are unpredictable because they're maybe not in full control of their senses, they're wandering around, they're shouting, they're abusive to everybody, not just women and girls, but you can understand that feeling that says, well, I'm not really sure what's going to happen next. And if you're not sure what's going to happen next, then that makes you frightened.
Absolutely. Exercising outdoors as well grabbed my attention because that's something we've been encouraged to do throughout the pandemic, but not everyone feels comfortable with that.
That's mine too. I know my wife occasionally goes out running, and a couple of my neighbours, female neighbours as well, I see sort of jogging past the window. And you just take it for granted that you're going out. I go out for a run, I don't think twice about it. But then when I think about where I do run, it's cycle paths, it's walkways through heavily sort of green areas, if you like, and it's lovely in the daylight to see all that and listen to the bird song and things, but on a night they can be dimly lit. The LED lights that our council's put up now are great, but they're designed not to be intrusive, so sometimes you're almost running from pool of light to pool of light rather than a well-lit walkway.
Right. Yeah. I've got to say as well, 35% of those questions said they'd suffered sexual harassment, assault or even rape. But shockingly, 12%, they just never reported it. How do we go about tackling this?
I think under-reporting of any crime is an issue right now. But that's the statistic, like you said, is quite shocking. And when you look at the detail of that and the reasons behind people not reporting, sometimes it's because they don't deem it as being serious enough. And that in itself, if we don't report the small stuff, if we don't report everything, then it doesn't allow our police force to build up a picture of where the problem areas might be. One of the things I've struggled with this is trying to sort of pinpoint certain areas. So if I'm getting respondents from a survey that says they don't feel particularly safe in a park in Middlesbrough, for example, or in a park in Stockton or Hartlepool or Redcar, I find it quite difficult to get information that correlates with reports. So if somebody tells me that a park in Middlesbrough is a problem, I go back to the police team and say, right, well, how many reports have you had from this park? It's quite difficult to pull that data to correlate the two.
Right. So we need more people reporting different things as and when they happen.
We do, yes.
I know. Sometimes I get a bit anxious about coming into work early doors, especially in the dark and that kind of thing. And even members of my own family have said, oh, you watch too many crime programmes, you'll be fine. How do we go about turning this around then? Have you got a plan?
Yeah, I think we've had some great success with the funding we've already had through Safer Streets 1 and Safer Streets 2. This round of funding is particularly aimed at the nighttime economy, areas where women might be on alone. So I think that better lighting, like you said, we talked about those runners who run from pool of light to pool of light, just being able to look at those areas and improve lighting will help. Having CCTV, most of our town centres are well covered by CCTV. But I think for me, it's then about, well, what are we doing with that information? How are we responding to that information? So what I want to see from this as well is, as we put this bid together, it's about, yes, we're going to do things, but then as a police force, how are we going to follow that up? Because you can have all of the information in the world, but if you don't do anything with it, it's pointless. So we're going to challenge that. And then I think the other part of that is, one of the things I want to look to do over the course of my 3 years in role is look at education and how we do that. So we talk a lot in schools, and everybody talks about knife crime and violent crime and things like that at the minute. But when we go in and talk about those things, I think we've got to talk about domestic violence. I think we've got to talk about sexual violence. I think we've got to talk about the rights and wrongs, not just with the girls in school, but with the boys as well. Because I think one of the other things that came out there, wolf whistling. I think something like 75% of people said wolf whistling was the biggest form of harassment they'd experienced. And as a bloke and as a father of 3 lads, I asked the ladies in my office and said, well, how do you feel about that? Because it's something that I've never really considered. And every single one of them said, yeah, but it's just how it makes you feel. And there's an age thing in there. Some of the older ones sort of said, oh, well, get lost, mate. Whereas some of the younger ones felt a bit unnerved by things like that. And that's something I think we need to help educate our young men into how that makes women feel.
It's excellent. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I really appreciate you joining us here on BBC Radio Tees, and best of luck with that, particularly in the schools and educating, like you said there. That's fantastic. That is Steve Turner. He is the Cleveland Police and Crime Commissioner. Done this survey. The results are in. Wanting to tackle it in the best way possible as well. And yeah, like Steve said, if you experience anything, if you're out and about on your own, you must report it so that they have the results and they know which areas that they can tackle. They can't do anything about it unless you tell them about it, basically, can they?